The Spin-off Podcast Network.
This is Kiwi is back for a brand new season with more inspiring kōrero from special guests including rugby player, father and role model TJ Perenara.
My family bring me joy. Rugby brings me joy too, but it's not the same joy as my family brings me.
And global dancer and choreographer Kirsten Dodgen.
For some reason, people think I'm very intimidating.
Listen to the new season of This is Kiwi, brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in collaboration with KiwiBank. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Over 25 years ago, on September 29th, 1998, we watched a brainy girl with curly hair drop everything to follow a guy she only kind of knew all the way to college. And so began Felicity. My name is Juliette Littman, and I'm a Felicity superfan. Join me, Amanda Foreman, who you may know better as Megan, the roommate, and Greg Grunberg, who you may also know as Sean Blunberg, as the three of us revisit our favorite moments from the show and talk to the people who helped shape it. Listen to Dear Felicity on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
NAIR is public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.
Mānawa mai e te kāhui o Matariki. Mānawa mai e te whetū tapu o te tau. Kia ora, nau mai ki tēnei kōna ipurangi kia ne. Ko te kuru o te Marama Dius tēnei o Ngāti Porou o Ngāti Rangitihi. E tangi atu nei ki o tātou mate. E mihi atu nei ki a koutou kua tūhono mai rā. Welcome to NAIR. My name is Te Kuru Dius. I'm in the driver's seat today for this Matariki special. Today it's my pleasure to host artist Nikau Hindin of Ngāi Tūpoto, Te Rarawa and Ngāpuhi. Nikau is a maker of aute who works with natural earth pigments. He mahi tuku iho te aute. It was a practice brought here by our tipuna who, using their vast knowledge of celestial navigation, sailed te moana nui a kiwa from Hawaii and eventually made Aotearoa their home, although at some point the practice of aute was discontinued. Nikau has spent the past decade dedicated to remembering and reinvigorating the practice of aute in Aotearoa. It revolves around the life cycle of the plant, from growing and harvesting to processing the inner bark and creating a fine cloth. Nikau has taken on the responsibility of holding wānanga and teaching this knowledge to a new generation of makers. She works intimately with plants and tools that also come from the natural environment and aligns her practices with the Maramataka, the Māori stellar lunar calendar. Her pieces are born from Māori conceptions of time and space. Her star maps record the rising and setting of stars like Matariki, Puanga and Rehua on the horizon and come from the navigational system of the star compass. She uses her maps as mnemonics to record the movement of stars in relation to the stellar lunar calendar and tracks their seasonal changes. One big change coming up for us in Aotearoa, which is not far from happening, a significant historical moment as we rotate towards the acknowledgement of Matariki in what will be the first Indigenous public holiday in the world. An official hautapu ceremony facilitated by the Minister for Crown Relations in conjunction with Te Papa and attended by the Prime Minister and Dr. Rangimātāmua, Chair of the Matariki Advisory Group, who are behind this big push to see our traditions around Matariki and Māori astronomy recognised by the Crown for the benefit of all New Zealanders. Nikau will be on a panel of artists that morning of the hautapu ceremony, which will be broadcast live, where the artists, including Maisi Rika, Irana Kōpu and Tyrone Ohia, will discuss how they incorporate Matariki into their mahi. After the break, I'll be joined by our manuhiri and my two co-hosts, Nā reira, e hoa ma, kia mau tonu atu rā. Nau mai anō, kua piri nei ōku hoa mahi, a rā ko Leonie Hayden, rāwa ko Meriana Johnsen, tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora, kia ora.
E nā koe e hoa.
And we extend our mihi to our manuhiri, Nikau Hindin. Nikau, my darling, tēnā koe, welcome to the potty.
Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora e hoa.
Ngā kai kōrero o ne o tira tēnā tātou e hui mai nei ki te whakarongo ki tēnei kōnai ipurangi.
Kia ora.
Mai, haere mai.
Ai, piwari, tēnō piwari kōrua.
Ai.
We'll try and stay on course.
ai.
Tell us, Nikau, Maramataka, stellar lunar calendar, how does that relate to your own mahi?
Well, I think actually it doesn't just relate to my mahi, it relates to all of our mahi and the way that we interact with our natural environment every day. But I think I became interested in the stellar lunar calendar after reading Rangitāne's book, Matariki, and realizing that Matariki is just one of the significant morning stars that we use to kind of track time, and that there are so many other stars to learn about that are associated with every new month or new moon cycle. So I make these star maps and use my star maps to document when the stars rise, when these morning stars rise, and where they are on the horizon, and kind of just adding to my kete of knowledge, which originally came from learning about the star compass. So, yes.
And where did that take place? Where did you learn about star compass?
I learned about the star compass when I was in Hawaii, and I was lucky enough to be surrounded by the apprentice navigators on the Waka Hokulea. And so just by hanging around with them, with those apprentice navigators, and watching them study for their long voyages to Tahiti, I kind of just absorbed all our different stars and the stories that they have, and where they rise on the horizon, and how they use our whetū to find direction. And that's how, just by watching them study using stellarium, and they make kind of like graphs to help them remember the stars, and depending on what time of the year they're going on their voyage, they'll record those specific stars. And so that's how I came up with my star map system. And then coming back to Aotearoa, I had to learn all of our Māori names for the stars, and which was really awesome. Then through teachers like Rangitāne, I realized that I used to call them, we have our voyaging stars, our navigation stars, and then we have our land stars, which are the stars associated with the maramataka. But then I realized that our star knowledge probably came originally from our maramataka knowledge, and our awareness of just where the stars were and where they were going to rise on the horizon at different times of the year. So, we think that the maramataka is just about the moon, but it's so much more. It's actually just about everything, and it's actually just about telling the time, and knowing what time it is helps you locate yourself in time and space. And because we use the Gregorian calendar system, and colonization has taken away our own ability to tell time in a Māori way. And I think that that's like the most powerful thing is having that connection to time and space. And if you take that away from a people, then you're taking away their connection with the environment, with the taiao, with the whenua, but also with the stars. And that's the most important thing to me is just being able to reclaim that mātauranga, because I don't think that it's something that was just for like our tohunga. I think that, everyone knew what day it was, this was mātauranga for the common person. What was happening and what moon phase it was just everyday knowledge.
It's a method of survival there.
Yeah.
You know what to eat because you have to eat.
Exactly.
I'm really curious. I mean, a tahua tō mahitoi, but it's not just beautiful mahitoi, it's a map, ne?
Mm.
So, I mean, we're not using a visual medium right now. This is a podcast. Engari, are you able to explain to us how a star map works?
Yeah, so basically it's just a two-dimensional version of our star compass. And the star compass comes from the idea of you're on your waka in the middle of the ocean. You can't see any land, and there's a horizon 360 degrees around you. So it's a three-dimensional framework, and that horizon is divided into 32 star houses, and every star house is 11 1/4 degrees. Within those star houses, there's north, south, east, and west, and then there's 7 star houses between those. And ko te whakaaro is that stars live in those houses and then they rise from the east, those eastern houses, and then they set and they go back to their same house in the opposite horizon on the west side. And so if you memorize where those different stars rise and set, then when you see those stars on the horizon, like Tautoru, rises exactly due east. So if you see Tautoru low on the horizon, like we will in the morning of Matariki, we can be pretty sure that that's east. And then same for if we see it on the western horizon, close to the horizon. So basically my star map is like a 2-dimensional representation of that 3D model, and I do nihotaniwha at the base of my star maps to represent the different star houses, and then I have a line that represents the horizon, and then I have vertical lines, and each vertical line represents a star and exactly where they rise on the horizon, and they have different, like for example, Matariki has 9 niho on it because it's got 9 whetū. And then Tautoru has 3 because it's got 3 whetū.
Where do you conceptualize yourself when you're at the beginning of a project? You talked about locating yourself within time and space. Do you imagine that you're out on a waka in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Or, do you do any visualizations like that, go and stand at the beach and look at the whetū in the morning?
I walk every morning with my kuri, and I walk along Wainui, and I locate myself where I am, which is in Te Tairawhiti, fortunately, and so I get to see a big, eastern horizon, and so a lot of my work, I visualize it as being the eastern horizon with the whetū rising up out of the horizon here.
Beautiful. I love your kōrero around time and space, and it's something I'm trying to decolonize myself, even just saying things like, feeling that taumaha because of the end of the year. And some people look at me funny like, what, end of the year? I'm like, yeah, it's the end of the year in Aihe. In what way has your work changed how you perceive time?
I think it's made me more, I pay attention to, of course, which phase of the moon we're in, and I'm always looking at our taiao, so I'm looking at the ocean every day and noticing the relationship and how the ocean has changed depending on the moon phase. And you would be surprised with how kind of consistent the ocean behaves at certain moon phases. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and do you use it in your own sort of marakai and like knowing when to plant and when, when's wāhauhake and...
Yes, especially with my mahi aute, I always try and harvest in Rakonui. So that's when the cells are the most juiciest, and so that they're the easiest to kind of process and clean when the plants are harvested in Rakonui. And then even just annually, I try and do all my harvesting and processing in the first 4 months of the year in the summertime, and then tēnei wāute or takurua, I'm inside painting because it's you're not really supposed to harvest the aute plant during winter because the kiri or te rako kind of like clings to the...
Would it make it hard to strip?
Yeah, it makes it really, really tough.
Yeah.
It's telling you it doesn't want to come off.
Yeah, it's just very resistant.
A lot of people hit you up for commissions and they request dates and you put those as star maps. Is that something you do, and what sort of dates do they ask for?
I sometimes do. I do the birth date of someone, so I can like make them a star. Like when your baby was born, you can figure out their latitude, so where they were in the horizon, and then the time of their birth, and I can paint them as a star. And so I did my grandmother Te Ao Karere, who I actually never got to meet, but I did her birthday as a representation of her, like a portrait of her. But I also would do, my brother's grandfather passed away, and so I'll do a star map for him, which will represent, te wai whetū rangitia. Yeah.
I reckon you're going to get so many requests now after this.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. It's like you're not busy enough, eh?
Yeah, I don't really do commissions very often anymore.
Nice one, Te Kuru.
Yeah.
You talk about Matariki as a opportunity for others, like myself and New Zealanders, as an opportunity or as a learning device, as a portal, as a gateway. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think Matariki is an amazing opportunity for us to learn more about our mātauranga Māori in astronomy and to learn about all the other stars that are in our sky and to think about or realize that what is in our sky is also reflected in the land, and that there's so many connections to what's happening with our whetū in terms of, predicting the weather. You can predict a storm coming and things like that by looking at how the stars are, how much they twinkle. I think we just think that they look the same all the time, but you can just observe them and see that they don't look the same every night, and that sometimes they are going off a bit more, or they're a bit brighter, or they're not as bright, and that Matariki is a significant cluster for us. But there's also there's Pipiri. Pipiri is the first month of our Māori lunar year, and Pipiri is actually a star, the star Hamal, and then Takuru is the second month of the year, and that star is Sirius. And so these, our tupuna would wake up 4:30 probably, or like super early in the morning, and observe the rising of these different morning stars, and that would be how they would take a reading, or be like, oh, this is the time that we're in now, by using the stars. And there's lots of other stars, not just Matariki, that we used to tell time.
Which star rising or appearing was used to signal the start of the harvest?
He aro matawai.
He ua te pātai. I'm doing an assignment, and I was like, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I think that depends on, because...
on where you are, ne?
Yeah, I know that Uncle Tom down in Kahungunu, he plants his kumara the second weekend after, the first full moon after Labour weekend, all the stuff, and he lines them up with the maunga and the awa and the stars, the pattern that he plants. And so I do think it is specific to your location. Everything, that's what we're learning, definitely, is that I was up north a couple of weeks ago, and your whole what you see is so different, being on the west coast and having the Hokianga right there, and then the mountain ranges, so the eastern horizon is obscured, so that's why they use puanga instead of Matariki, and everything's just local.
Yeah.
But as my dad always says to me now, is that everything's changing so quickly. The weather is becoming much more erratic and difficult to predict. So it's a bit of a funny time, I think, for we're getting back into learning about these systems, which are kind of almost like no longer systems, because they're no longer consistent because of climate change. So if we had, and sometimes there are people who have maintained that knowledge or observed these changes, but it would be a lot easier to track the kind of decline in biodiversity if we knew all of the patterns.
Imagine if everyone was paying attention.
If our knowledge transmission wasn't disrupted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Are you excited for your kōrero for the panel next week?
I'm a bit nervous. It'll be a beautiful hautapu. It'll be really awesome to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and
I can't wait.
be in Porneke and
sunny Wellington.
Yeah, I think it will be really cool and really special to observe the way that tikanga occurs through in this hautapu process will be really interesting to hear all the karakia and to hopefully smell the kai, see the steam rising up.
For our listeners that might not know what a hautapu is, do you want to just explain to us what that ceremony is?
Yeah, I'm not probably the best person to explain, but it is a celebration of Matariki by offering kai to Matariki. And the way I visualize it is the steam going up and Matariki receiving those fruits of the harvest. And that's why you have all the different kai. You have the tuna and the kumara, and you also have ika and kiriru. We probably won't have kiriru.
Yeah, I was like, where are we getting the kiriru from?
You might have a hey.
Yeah, we used to have hey at our kura. We used to do smoked fish and smoked eel and hey and kumara, and those are our kai that we made offerings with.
And they all connect back to different whetū, right? So like Te Nuku is your kumara, waiti, I hope I'm not going to mess this up, waita's saute, so that's where you get it ika, and waiti is something like tuna. And what does hey connect back to?
Tupuarangi.
Supposedly tupuarangi, but they don't really fly, do they? So
yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't really make sense.
they don't really occupy the trees either. So
we're just substituting for now until we get our populations back up.
I've seen a chicken in a tree before.
Titi.
Titi.
Titi would be great. Yeah. I'm sure the Atua would like that.
Good. Totally.
What are some of the basics, I think, before we start to wrap up? What are some basics for people that you can give today? People like me who, as hard as we might try, some of it just doesn't stick.
Yeah, I think the best thing to remember is that stars like the sun rise in the east and set in the west. That we have to remember about where we are on the globe, and we're very low. Our latitude is quite low, so that means that we see, Mahutonga and Atutahi, which is the Southern Cross in Canopus, and they're circumpolar, so they never set. They go in a circle, and we can see the South Celestial Pole, which is the celestial version of the South Pole. And just, I think, when you watch Rehua rise and Te Matawa Maui rises, like on its back, the fishhook rises on its back, but the way that it will set will be different. So that, our stars, they rise in a certain way, but because of where we are located, they kind of move around, and the Milky Way kind of all moves around us in a really interesting way. And so I think if you notice, even in the summertime, which is usually the time where we're outside and looking at the stars, you'll be able to see Matariki at that time, and just to take note and be like, oh, look, there's Matariki. And we can see Matariki in the summertime, but we can't see Matariki sort of in autumn around May, even April. In Te Tairāwhiti, we can't really see Matariki because it's already set. And so just to be aware that the stars are always moving around us, and try and work out where they are at, like when you see them and what time of the year that is. And then you can kind of put together a picture. And I guess another good basic one is that Matariki and Rehua are always opposite each other. So the cluster of Matariki, and so if they're rising on the eastern horizon, then on the western horizon, Rehua, and so the Te Matawa Maui is setting because they're kind of opposite to each other.
Did you get all that, Meriana?
Basics.
I actually was taking notes.
Good thing is we can listen back to this.
It's just about trying to just learn about it because it connects us back to, our tupuna, and it makes us more aware of like where we are. Because when I go up north and you're like, wow, the stars are so different here, and even when you go to the West Coast, it just everything feels so much different because the way the sun moves across the sky, and just to notice those things is really important because that affects the land and the people and all of that.
I think at some point in your kōrero, I just got stuck on the image of the stars moving around us. And I was like, feel care. Like, it's a beautiful but buzzy concept, eh?
Yeah, the stars are still there even when the sun's up.
Right. Even if you live in Te Taone Nui and you can't see the stars because of all the light pollution, they're still there.
Yeah.
Turn off your lights.
That's what I really grapple with Meriana, and I think once I crack that, I think that's the ongoing mission, is to understand how we move as a planet and where we are on the whenua, and how the stars, or how we move within the galaxy, as opposed to stars rising and setting, which is the metaphoric way of understanding it. But I'm always, when I was in China, I felt lost, because I looked up in the rangi and I didn't recognize any of the stars. The moon looked way different. I'm like, nah, this is what's going on here. So it's imperative for us to try and get an understanding. You can feel way more grounded, I think, for myself when I know, there's tautoru. It was there today or last night, and here it is, tonight. So,
Ai, ana.
How tō moemoe a pāna ki au mahi? What's your vision for mahi aute in Aotearoa?
I think my vision has always been to adorn the inside of wharenui, because being from up north and not having many whare that have our visual language, I do really long for it, and I think I would love to put aute on the walls. One of the reasons my visual language comes from tukutuku is because the subject matter of my mahi is about our whetū, and as Rangi Mātāmua says, tango and wainui, who are the parents of our whānau Marama, they made a wharenui, and that wharenui was called Hui Te Rangi Ora, and the stars were the tukutuku panels. And that's why our tukutuku look like our stars, basically, or also reference our whetū. And so I would love for my aute to be on the inside of a wharenui, but also to be, on the stage of Te Matasini one day would be amazing. And people's hair, just as adornment, just as like little adornments, but to deck out a whole couple would be really cool.
I love that about our toi Māori, that the relationship with the materials is so intimate and respectful. You're not buying a canvas and painting on it. You're saying your karakia and you're cutting down a rākau for your whakairo, or you're harvesting the bark for your aute. And then what's the process after that? There's a beating process that is what eventually turns it into the paper, Ned. That looks really, like, physically quite hard.
Yeah, it is. You have to be quite strong, but it's not a violent beating. It's a methodical, very intentional beating where you're just focusing on spreading the fibers evenly, and the first beat is very physical. And stripping off the bark is quite physical, especially if you've got bigger, older trees. But then the second beating process, which is after you soak it in water and ferment it or wet it for 4 weeks or 3 weeks, and then beating that is another whole process that makes it kind of look totally different. So it's a real process of transformation from bark to cloth, and then there's harvesting all of your pigments, and that's about relationships and finding knowledge holders.
You must be an incredibly patient person. I think I am definitely not the type of person who could do what you do. Do you think, though, that through the process of learning your mahi toi, that the aute has taught you patience, or have you always been that way?
Definitely I've learnt about patience. You are very humbled. It's a very humbling process. You think you are good at something, and then you'll go to a plant and you just won't be able to do the thing that you thought you were good at. So it's always putting you in your place.
Can aute be used for kākahu, or is it a separate sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. In Hawaii, they make these enormous, beautiful pau skirts for hula, and they're like pleated and they look really beautiful when they dance in it. In terms of what we used aute for, I've read that we did use them for maro. So I'm pretty keen to make te kurua maro and mokoa maro for when he's doing his uhi. Maro. I think that they were used for undergarments.
Is that what maro is, like type of?
Oh, maro is the English word is, I don't like the English word, it's loincloth is the English word. So
that's what I thought. And now we get to imagine te kuru in a loincloth. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, you just wrap it around. It's wave. Maro is, they're cool.
This covers the important parts, Meriana.
Yeah.
Right.
Pai ake te rakapu.
A lot of our brothers and sisters in the islands still say o waka with maro.
Anake.
Aye.
Yeah.
It's warm enough in those ways
true.
too, but you know.
Yeah, little old me from the South Island, I'm like, I'm going to get makariru.
Yeah. Probably not many maro down there back in the day.
Cool.
Freezing.
Oh, well, tēnā koe, Nikau. That's all we have time for today. So thank you. Tēnā koe i o kōrero me wā mahi. Hei whakarauora i tēnei mahi tuku iho. Ara te mahi aute. E mihi ana ki a koe.
Tēnā koutou, e mihi ana kia koutou.
Pai tō Matariki.
Ai, kia pai tō koutou Matariki.
Me koe hoki.
Karawe. After the break, Leonie, Meriana and I will have a brief kōrero about our plans for the Māori New Year. Kia mau tonu atu rā.
Kia ora, this is Toby Manhire, here to urge you to tune in to Gone by Lunchtime, a podcast with me, Annabelle Lee Mather and Ben Thomas, tackling the world of New Zealand politics, from policy to polling, from scandal to psychodrama. Listen to Gone by Lunchtime, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network, wherever good pods are sold.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, Senior Writer at The Spin-Off. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
No mai hoki mai. To round off our kōrero today, we're going to have a little chat about what we're up to recognise Matariki and the hautapu. So, e hoama, what are you guys up to? What are some of the things you guys are leaving behind in the old year? I spoke to Matua Rereata Mākiha, and he said that's one of the things they practice up in Te Tai Tokerau. They shut down the old year before they even look at opening up the new year. And they let go of redundant things and they put to sleep issues or projects or things that didn't serve them or didn't work for them, which I think is a really cool whakaaro that we could incorporate. So,
do they like say that? Do they sort of wānanga those things together, or do they sort of, give them up to the setting whetū?
That's a good question. I'll be sure to ask him that for part 2.
Just yell it into the void.
But I think both of them work. You can have an internal wānanga, but to sit around and have a group wānanga about what didn't work last year, I mean, there's probably better feedback in the rōpū.
I'm letting go of feeling racist narratives. I'm letting go of that in my new year because they don't have anything to do with me. And I'm choosing to walk away from feeling any type of way about those kinds of people. Ooh. They don't belong in my ao anymore.
Man.
Cool. Not going to let them take free rent.
Aye, exactly. Kicking them out. I'm kicking them out.
Too much.
Yeah. Just noise. Zone it out.
Aye.
Not your raru. Not yours to carry and hold.
Yeah, because that's their goal, I guess.
Yeah, and, it's like anything, if you ignore it, it goes away. And I'm not saying that, those narratives or people will go away necessarily, but they can go away from my world. I'm walking a different path now.
Ka pai koe.
Miki.
It's interesting for me this year because naturally, even though only in the last couple years have I come to understand about Matariki and the mātauranga connected to it, I tend to make big life changes around this period anyway. Like last year, I left my partner at the time, left my job. yeah, I did a lot of big changes. But this year I'm quite settled and really feel like in the latter half of last year, I found the course that I was supposed to be on. And so really I'm kind of trying to pull a lot of that through into this year and just continue my reo haerenga, reclamation of my mātauranga a iwi a hapu, and I mean a small goal of mine to move into, you know, what I'm sending out to Hiwa i te rangi, the whetū of wishes and here. I am learning to bake.
Nice.
Like, it sounds real basic, but I want some practical skills.
And it's not basic. It's hard AF, man. It's a whole science.
I think it's quite good, though, to whakatau because I tend to be quite a rush, busy, frantic person. And, you know, this what I'm finding is the secret to good baking is follow the recipe to the T.
Right.
Don't take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Don't mess it around with it.
And you got to take your time with it.
Yeah, so...
Ka pai.
Someone else has already gone through the effort of putting it all that work in to put it in a book.
Yeah.
What about you, Kuru? What are you
Hey.
leaving behind
He
from...
hato wawata.
I think a big learning curve for me was learning how to say no. It's pretty cliche these days, especially on IG, but learning how to turn down mahi. As someone who's recently joined the world of freelancing, I had quite a steep learning curve. It's been about 12 months since I started freelancing, and I hit the ground running, saying yes to everything because I was kind of worried that, and I had been told by, you know, friends in the industry, well, when the mahi's on, you just got to take the mahi and you got to go for it. But I think it's much more nuanced than that. It's understanding time management and how to maintain energy, knowing what projects serve you as well as, you know, can help you pay the rent or whatever. So, you know, I've written a list recently about like a checklist for myself so I can just be more aware of what the project might offer me and what I can offer the project before diving right into it, before I say yes. So, you know, I can sit down and have a good kōrero with people and just so that everyone's on the same page and really just trying to get better outcomes from mahi. And I feel like everyone can do that no matter what sort of line of work you're in. So that's really one thing I'm really trying to take into next year, and just hauora as well. Got knocked over by the flu last week, so I've been in bed for a few days and I haven't been this sick. It wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting, but apparently it's going around the community. There's a few of my mates who have it as well, and it's knocked them over as well. So it's really just a good time for me to be like, okay, got to get back into training and just try and hopefully that goes, you know, that coincides with learning and participating in kura reo and things like that as well. I guess that holistic ao Māori dream is always something that I'm working towards in the background, and we get busy in our daily lives. But yeah, that's it for me.
Ka pai.
I like that these are questions that anyone from Aotearoa can use to help them understand Matariki, what this holiday is for. You know, it's easy enough to... the mātauranga is deep and wide, so it is not going to be easy for everyone to be able to understand which stars do what and how to, you know, read the tohu of the maramataka. Here I no. It is easy enough to understand that at the end of the new year, you can practice these things that are quite mindful, which is letting go of things, wishing for new things, farewelling loved ones that have passed. Like, I think these are really easy ways for New Zealanders to understand what Matariki's for, ne?
Yeah. And if I'm going to be honest, I need to use it for that as well. We've lost a few people in our whānau. We've had some big events. We had some unveilings, you know, so even though those people have already gone, Matariki is that time to sort of deal with that. If you're still carrying a lot of that mamae for people that have passed, it's a prime opportunity to engage in a hautapu. I've heard of people, you know, it doesn't have to be titi and kumara in your kete. I've heard of some whānau that have started off with marshmallows with a little fire at their local marae. And, you know, and then the next year they brought kai from the shop, and then the year after they had mara. So we got to take a long-term look. Like, this is going to be around forever.
Ka pai.
We've got a few years to get into the groove of it, and I have big aspirations for what it will look like for my tamariki mokopuna. But yeah, using it as a way to deal with grief, I think is probably going to be the most beneficial for us as whānau.
It's nice to hear you say, because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because at the beginning of last year, going by the Gregorian calendar, we had a couple of big losses in our whānau too, and definitely still feeling that taumaha. But we're sort of like, well, how do I approach Matariki, because, according to the mātauranga, Pōtukawa has already taken them on. But it's, it's nice to hear. I mean, I guess that was the kōrero of...
Rereata mākia.
Ai, the kōrero being that it's just about releasing taumaha in general. And if you are still carrying that forward, even if you have said goodbye to them, then it's a good time to deal with it. I definitely think that's something that, I'm still carrying a lot of that mamae from those losses, and also been thinking a bit about how to give back to the environment, because, this is a time to, the whetū and the Marama taka, it's all about our connection to the taiao, right? And having lived in the city for like 9 years, but finally living back out in, ahu whenua in the country, there's a few like cleaning up of awa, cleaning up the beach, which I'm really keen to take part of, just to mihi back to papatua nuku, and really, just give back essentially, koina, ana. So I feel like that's a cool other way that people are looking to celebrate Matariki is, go and do a tidy up, go and pick some rapihi up, Kotahi holder, it doesn't have to be a long time, but that's a way you can give back, I reckon.
Yeah, tautoko. And I really hope that that's like an overarching theme that comes through especially for everyone listening, that for me, the purpose of this, the regeneration of mātauranga Māori, is to help people understand a more holistic Māori worldview where we can exist sustainably within our environment. So what Meriana, what you're saying, Eho, is on point. If anything, this should encourage us to be more aware of our environment and our impact upon it, and how we can tread lightly and just take care. Because as you know, we're in a crisis. Climate crisis is upon us.
And I think especially here, because we've just grown up, the country has grown up with all of our big holidays being from a different country, a different climate, a different whenua. I could really hope that people actually understand that this public holiday is of this whenua, regardless of where you're from. If you live here, we finally get to celebrate something that's ours. It's not Easter or Christmas or any of these other imported holidays. And it's like how Nikau was talking about how it helps you place yourself in time and space. This is the one holiday we've been given now that places us in this place in this time. So you can, look up at the sky and see exactly where you are. We don't live in England as much as some of our country people would like to think, but we don't. We just don't. We don't live in any other country but here under these whetū.
Kia ora.
Aye. I've been enjoying some of the kōrero online and debate about turning lights off. And, there's been calls for the poneke, because this is the rohe I'm part of, fireworks to be cut, which I think's actually, I support that. I think we have to actually, we can't just have a Māori holiday and bring these Pākehā ways of celebrating into it. But, everyone loves their fireworks, so for anyone who's listening, I don't want to, I'm not going to be that guy like rallying against it, but personally I'd be like, waiho, I don't think I'll go.
That's quite funny though, because there was heaps of radu when the council decided to move those fireworks displays from New Year's to Matariki, and all the racists got mad. Because they were like, you're taking away all of our traditions.
The old Guy Fawkes, eh?
And I was just like, I don't know, have you ever heard of Christmas and birthdays and Easter? And it was a hilarious narrative to me, like, our old ways are dying. The old ways of fireworks.
Out with the old and in with the older.
Hey, pie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think e hoa mā, we could go all night, but maybe we should leave it there for now. So, tēnā kōrua, co-hosts, Leonie, Meriana, tēnā kōrua i o kōrua, whakaaro me o kōrua kōrero i te rane.
Kia ora hoa.
Ai, ngā mihi e poa.
Shout out to our podcast manager, Te Aihe Butler, doing overtime today. Big mihi to you, studio engineer Jacob Edmonds. You can catch us wherever you get your audio. We'll be back in another couple weeks with some post-Matariki debriefs.
Ai.
Noho rātura.
NAIR is public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air and brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network. It was hosted and researched by Te Kuru Jews with Meriana Johnsen and Leonie Hayden. NAIR was produced by Te Aihe Butler. with senior production from Jane Yee and project management from Mark Kelleher.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I kōrero with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spin-off Podcast Network.